Good evening and welcome to the Late Debate. After Prime Minister Theresa May's bombshell this week, we'll be debating the general election. Starting off with Sir Vince Cable, the Liberal Democrat former Cabinet Minister who hopes to make a speedy return to the green benches of the House of Commons. He was the government minister who swapped the cabinet room for the ballroom, famously making a guest appearance on Strictly. He even had a go at stand-up comedy at the expense of Gordon Brown.
The House has noticed the Prime Minister's remarkable transformation in the last few weeks from Stalin to Mr. Bean.
In the 90s, Vince Cable could be heard at Lib Dem conferences making the case for environmental taxes.
Britain has earned a reputation, a deserved reputation, for being the dirty man of Europe.
In 1997, he was one of a group of Lib Dems to win Tory seats in southwest London on the back of Tony Blair's Labour landslide.
The distinctive feature of southwest London is that the Labour Party is nowhere.
A decade later, Vince Cable suddenly found himself acting leader of his party.
Min Campbell has this evening submitted his resignation.
When Northern Rock crumbled in 2007, he claims he saw the crash coming.
The debt problem that I've warned about for several years is now coming to fruition.
He was soon attracting the attention of another political joker.
Vince Cable suddenly presenting himself as a crazed Thatcherite axeman.
By 2010, he was in government, not as he hoped as Chancellor, but business secretary in the coalition. Cable and the Conservatives were uneasy bedfellows, as a secretly recorded conversation with a newspaper reporter revealed.
If they push me too far, then I can walk out and bring the government down, and they know that.
He's embarrassed by what's happened, and he's right to be embarrassed.
Matthias Tanya Wynne, the Conservative Party candidate, 25,500.
When Vince Cable lost Twickenham in 2010, it was one of the seismic shocks of election night. Now he's attempting a comeback. But standing in his way is the candidate who beat him, already rehearsing her message to voters.
It's 2 years. 2 years. I've already come this far. I've already fought this much, whether it's on Heathrow, on railways, on mental health, on air quality, loads of issues. And I'm going to be saying, give me more time and see what I can do.
Only one of them can be the next Twickenham MP, but which one will it be? Joining me now to get a little deeper into all those details is the former Twickenham MP, Sir Vince Cable. Welcome. Sir Vince, glutton for punishment or just bored of retirement?
Well, certainly not bored with retirement. I've got a very active life at the moment, writing books and universities and social enterprise, all kind of stuff. No, but I think this is a seismic election, you know, massively important. I don't want to be on the sidelines. I want to be in there. We've got this very big dividing line around Brexit, where I feel strongly, my party feels strongly. We're on the opposite side from the Tories. And
so
I want to be part of the battle.
Where does the party stand on Brexit? Are you trying to halt it or dilute it?
Well, at the moment, we're trying to make sure that the government pursues a soft Brexit approach rather than a hard line getting out of everything, which we think will have disastrous consequences. But we'll see in 2 years' time whether they're able to deliver a satisfactory agreement. They may, possibly, or we may get a bad one, or we may crash out of the European Union altogether, in which case we need a substantial group of MPs, Lib Dems, who will say, no, we cannot accept this.
Do you foresee any sentence or clause in the Lib Dem manifesto which might open the way for us not leaving the EU?
Well, certainly. We haven't written the manifesto. It's in draft and it's got to be agreed by my party colleagues. But if the outcome is disastrous of these negotiations, and the signs are not great, I mean, the European Union countries are taking a far tougher line than I think the government imagined. If we're faced with crashing out, you know, just having no basis for trade with our European partner countries, or if they settle for a very bad agreement, where we're much worse than we are at the moment, then we will certainly want to have the whole issue reopened.
What for you is the main problem with the government's stand on Brexit? I mean, what do you really take issue with Theresa May?
Well, we use this phrase hard Brexit. I know it's a cliche, but
it is a cliche. But
it's an extreme version of Brexit. I mean, it would be possible if the government were more subtle, I think, and less in hock to its own right wing, to negotiate a formal departure from the European Union, but which keeps the essential elements around the trade framework of the single market, around the customs union, which is crucial.
As a Remainer, what is the acceptable Brexit to you? What the future of us outside the EU?
Well, if they were able to negotiate an agreement which kept the basic framework of the single market, maybe with some modification on freedom of movement. Indeed, there may well have to be some modification of that. Kept the customs union, kept our cooperation over science and environmental matters, then I can see a way in which the country could come together on that. But if they pursue the extreme option of breaking away from all of these things, then that's going to lead us in a very bad direction.
You're obviously itching to get back onto the campaign. Are you pleased that Theresa May has called an election?
Yes, and we're certainly up for it, and my party's good morale. I mean, we were in a terrible position 2 years ago, but we've recovered very rapidly, and I think we're quite resilient. We've been through bad periods in our history before, but rapid growth of membership. I think 8,000 new people have joined in the last 48 hours, winning local by-elections across the country, and of course Richmond Park in the next seat to mine. So morale is good, a lot of volunteers, a lot of enthusiasm. We're certainly up for the election.
If you were in a position to enter a coalition, would you demand an end to expansion at Heathrow as a condition?
Well, we're not talking about coalition. I think coalition is wildly improbable in either direction. I mean, Labour, Tory. We're not talking coalition. But, Heathrow is a very big issue. I think a lot of my constituents feel very let down. The Conservatives made us a pretty solemn promise that they weren't going to expand Heathrow. They're now doing so. But it is a battle that will continue. There'll be continued arguments.
Do you struggle as a former business secretary with the idea of stopping Heathrow expanding? You can see the business case for it.
I didn't actually. No, I mean I think there's clearly a business case for having an aviation industry, and there's a business case for having good access to the big emerging markets of the world. But you can do that in a variety of ways, by building up provincial airports, and as people like Sadiq Khan have argued, by concentrating on Gatwick rather than Heathrow. It could be done in a variety of ways. I wasn't embarrassed as business secretary at all by that issue.
Can I ask you, what do you think of Tim Farron?
He's great. I mean, he came in as leader, and he was completely untried. He was in a very, very difficult position with a party that was on its knees. He's done a terrific job in building up morale, and I think around the Brexit issue, he's handled it in a very, very skillful way and positioned the party exactly right. I mean, when we were in government, he was backbencher. I was a cabinet minister. We disagreed on things sometimes, but I think he's really risen to the job, and I think it'll be a great success.
Your main opponent in Twickenham, Tanya Mathias, she's younger than you, she beat you last time. What are you going to say to voters to convince them they made a mistake?
Well, I had won the seat 4 times before Tanya won it last time. We actually agree on quite a lot of specific issues, but the truth of the matter is she's campaigning on a Conservative Party banner, and all of the things that a lot of my constituents care very strongly about, Twickenham, notably Remain, Brexit debate, about the airport, about some of the cuts that are now taking place on education, about the stresses in social care. I mean, she's standing on a Conservative banner where these things are deteriorating.
What do you think of her as an MP?
She's a perfectly likeable person. I have no personal quarrel with her, but she's standing as a Conservative, not as an independent. If she was standing as an independent, that would be different, but she's standing as a Conservative, and therefore she's standing on the manifesto that Theresa May is setting out.
Why is it that the southwest of London is such fertile ground for Lib Dems?
I think a mixture of reasons. I mean, we've worked at it for starters. Going back to the 1980s, we had people. It was fairly solid Conservative territory, and Labour were the opposition, and we had people who really worked away at the grassroots, built up a reputation for competence in local government, running things well, and I think that created the foundations for a very strong movement.
So you're going to win your old seat back?
I'm pretty confident. I'm not counting chickens, but yeah, pretty confident.
Sir Vince Cable, thank you very much for coming in this evening. By the way, if you're watching on the ITV London Facebook page, don't forget you can leave a question or a comment. Now, that general election announcement caught everyone off guard, but it wasn't long before the parties were campaigning at full tilt in the capital. If the opinion polls are to be believed, Jeremy Corbyn is on Mission Impossible. Many of his own MPs don't think he's Prime Minister material. Today, not far from his Islington comfort zone, Mr Corbyn used Labour's first election rally in Westminster to declare he won't play by the rules of a rigged system.
It's a rigged system set up by the wealth extractors for the wealth extractors. We will no longer allow those at the top to leech off those who bust their guts on 0 hours contracts, or those forced to make sacrifices to pay their mortgage or to pay their rent.
We now come to the motion on the early parliamentary general election.
The next election was supposed to be in 2020, but yesterday in Parliament, MPs agreed to tear up those rules too.
I will be campaigning for strong and stable leadership in the national interest, with me as Prime Minister.
Mr Corbyn visited Croydon Central, London's most marginal seat, where the Tory majority is just 165. This should be number one on Labour's London target list, but the polls point to Labour losses, not gains. There are 6 seats where Labour MPs have majorities of less than 2,000. Ealing Central and Acton, Brentford and Isleworth, Ilford North, Enfield North, Hampstead and Kilburn and Westminster North. The Lib Dem targets include Tory Twickenham and Kingston and Surbiton, along with Labour-held Bermondsey and Old Southwark.
Clearly this is a great opportunity for the Liberal Democrats. What we've seen in recent months around the country in council by-elections, for instance, is that we're gaining seats from all of the parties across the country.
We're getting our people together, we're getting people in place, we've got funding, so it's actually going to be an exciting 6 weeks.
We are the counterweight to UKIP, we are the antidote to UKIP. UKIP have hijacked the government, the government are basically dancing to the tune that UKIP are humming.
Jeremy Corbyn might want to shake things up, but even he, it seems, needs a little old-fashioned stage management.
Jeremy, look at the camera, please. Right down here.
Thank you very much for coming here today.
Oh dear. Well, to debate that, I'm joined by Labour's Andy Slaughter, Conservative Oliver Dowden and Liberal Democrat Baroness Lynn Featherstone. Welcome, all of you. Andy, doesn't that really sum up your problem?
Explain, Simon.
Well, he's not the most assured.
Jeremy is one of the most authentic, honest politicians I've ever met, and I think he communicates with the public in that way.
Oliver, isn't there a danger that the public will like an underdog?
Well, I think this election is all about leadership and who has the strength to take this country forward, to get the best deal for Brexit, and also to manage the economy properly. And I'm afraid on both those scores, there is absolutely no question that Jeremy Corbyn... Can you imagine Jeremy Corbyn sat round there in the negotiations in Europe trying to seek the best deal for us or managing our economy? It's the stuff of nightmares.
I think Oliver should start by apologising for the conduct of his party leader, the Prime Minister, who has committed the most extraordinary acts of dishonesty in assuring us, talking to people like you, Simon, face to face 2 weeks ago, saying there will not be an election until 2020, coming out and saying, I'm worried about getting Brexit through the House of Commons when she had a 5-to-1 majority. Can you trust anything this woman says?
Lynn, can I just ask you, if the polls are right, are you kicking yourself for going to the Lords and not staying to fight your old seat of Hornsey and Wood Green?
I'm saying, thank goodness, I can help in the election, but I don't have to be the candidate. I think we'll take back Hornsey and Wood Green, but I'm very happy to help Dawn Barnes, who is our candidate, and look loftily from the Lords upon it.
Is this election a referendum on Brexit or Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, a bit of both, really. But I think Brexit is the issue. And I think, you know, for us Liberal Democrats, Jeremy today saying that they're not going to offer a second referendum, Labour is not going to use that, is fantastic for the Liberal Democrats. We've always been the most pro-EU party. We're very clear about giving people a vote at the end of the deal, so they can say, yes, this is a brilliant deal, we'll take it, or no, we'd rather stay in the EU. People, not politicians, making the final decision.
Well, the people have made the final decision. The people made the decision last June. They decided to leave the European Union.
Yes, they did.
And the question at this election is who can deliver the best deal, and that's clearly Theresa May. And it really worries me if we have a second referendum, because you're saying to the British people, we don't trust you. You've got to have another go. And secondly, you create... Could I just finish this point? You create the incentive for member states of the Commission to give us the worst possible deal to convince people not to leave the European Union. It just does not make sense tactically, and Labour have not ruled out this themselves.
Well, you don't buy that?
I don't buy that at all. I mean, if Theresa May, and I hope this is not the case, ends up negotiating for us, we're going to get a terrible deal. Because the one, she simply gives away our negotiating hand. She's already said we're going for the hardest of hard Brexit. Yeah. She's ruining the country. She's bringing the economy down. We've got this terrible, old-fashioned, monochrome, isolationist view of the world. It's appalling. That's not what London wants. I don't think it's what the country wants.
There is a point here that London didn't vote for Brexit. Theresa May seems to be looking possibly to gain seats in the north, sacrificing London seats?
No, I think people will respect the fact that the country has voted for Brexit. The question now is who is best placed to deliver that Brexit, and there is a clear choice between Theresa May's leadership and this coalition of chaos, you see, between the Liberal Democrats, Labour and the SNP.
Oh, with respect, coalition of chaos Oliver, that's a line you've been given, but it doesn't stand up to analysis.
No, it doesn't.
The fact is, okay, let's start with that. The country's voted for Brexit. Let's see how we can assure. I think it's a mistake. It's a terrible mistake, and I hope in my lifetime we're back in the EU. I'll be perfectly honest with that. But at the moment we're heading out. Let's try and get a good economic deal. She is doing exactly the opposite of that for ideological reasons and to save her own skin.
You mentioned lines.
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn today repeated a line a couple of times about this being a rigged system. Do you agree?
What was a rigged system?
The whole electoral system, he's saying, is rigged in favour of wealthy capitalists over the
I think what Jeremy is saying is that there are people who game the system, who take advantage of the system, and you rely on government to put a bit of fairness, put a hand in the scales and weigh it in favour of ordinary people. And the trouble with Conservative governments, particularly this Conservative government, is if they put their hand anywhere, they put it on the side of the people who are gaming.
Will you be asking for Jeremy Corbyn to come out campaigning in Hammersmith?
Jeremy's been a friend of mine for 30 years, and we've campaigned together on a lot of really important London issues, on housing in London, on poverty in London.
Do you want him campaigning on?
I was talked to Jeremy this morning on the phone, and I think Jeremy is a fantastic campaigner, and I think he's one of the most sincere politicians I've ever met.
Talking of big hitters, do you think there's a role for Sadiq Khan in this campaign?
Absolutely, because what Sadiq Khan is not only the most popular politician in the country, not only is he a winner, not only is he someone who is governing well for Labour, he's a real example.
Can I just remind you of something he said back in August about Jeremy Corbyn? Let's have a listen to what the Mayor of London said, giving his verdict on Jeremy Corbyn's leadership.
He's failed to win the trust and respect of the British people. He's failed to organise an effective team. We've seen the EU referendum when he failed to provide the leadership to persuade people to vote to remain in the EU.
If even your own mayor can't sell him, how are you going to?
If you talk to Sadiq Khan now, whose big concern is the future of London and the London economy, about whether he wants a Labour government or a Conservative government now, and all the terrible problems that Theresa May is bringing to London, I think you will get a very clear answer as to how you should vote and how you should campaign.
You must love that, Oliver.
Well, it's a very serious question, which is we saw just last year that virtually no Labour Member of Parliament wanted Jeremy Corbyn to lead their party, and now they're going out to the country and saying we want this man to lead the country. I think that's a very unsustainable position.
I think Jeremy is a disaster for Labour, and in terms of where the Liberal Democrats are, it leaves us a clear field. And the thing is, you know, Theresa is probably going to win the election. I think, you know, but she needs a decent opposition, and Labour are not a decent opposition. It's only the Liberal Democrats who are going to drive against her in terms of trying to push away from a hard Brexit, to try and stay in the single market, to try and deliver, 48%, and quite frankly, some of the Brexit
You're getting frustrated with it.
Says the party with 9 MPs and one in London.
But we had nearly 60 before the last election.
Well done.
And that was an exceptional election
because of the coalition. You betrayed the people in this country by going into coalition and putting through an austerity program. You absolutely did. And my voters and the voters of London will not forget that. You might like to forget that, but they won't forget that.
No, and you will hang on, you know, how could you put the Tories into coalition? Well, look what you did. Coalition you forget, back in May 2010, the perilous state of the economy and the cliff edge we were on, and this country needed stability, and we did at our own expense.
Let me answer.
Anyway, there's no point going over that. You are a lousy opposition now.
Of course you don't want to go over that. Let me step outside this bubble by answering that question. This is what my voters talk to me about. Why is the main hospital being demolished in my constituency when demand is is going up.
PFI Labour.
No, it isn't. So please don't be silly. Number two, why are we having massive cuts to our school budgets at the moment? And why are we having this hard Brexit, which is wrecking the economy? Those are the issues that people want to talk about. You want to talk about little bubble. I know you're in the House of Lords now, a little club there. You want to talk about little bubble issues.
Can I bring Oliver in?
I think that's quite offensive. You know, energy and climate change, which is not a little bubble. I think it's the future of the planet.
Oliver, you were a close advisor to David Cameron.
Yes.
He gambled on the referendum. Is Theresa May gambling here on the election?
No, I think she has reluctantly taken the decision in the national interest. She has realised that in order to get the best deal for us in Europe, to deliver through the reforms she wants, she must have a mandate from the British people. And this is what the election is about. It's about going to the British people and saying, give me the mandate so I can deliver strongly the best deal for the United Kingdom, the best deal from Brexit, not a hard Brexit, a deal that respects the will of the British people, which is they want to control migration, which means you have to leave the single market.
She's given up the single market, she's given up the customs union. There's nothing in there.
I was involved with this for 5 years in Downing Street. You cannot convince the Germans to control migration whilst you're within the single market. So you have a choice, membership of the single market or controlling migration. And for me, there was a clear message, which is we need to control migration. Now, I was a Remainer, but I believe in respecting the will of the British people and now delivering on that will. And the person who can deliver on that will is clearly Theresa May. And I would challenge you with a straight face to tell me that Jeremy Corbyn is capable of delivering on that deal.
I know you don't want to talk about Theresa May. You'd love to talk about Jeremy Corbyn, but you don't want to talk about Theresa May. The fact is, she's thrown away all our negotiating advantages. She's thrown away the trading relationship with our major partners. She's going around the world prostrating herself to dictators in the hope of signing a trade deal here and there. It's a pathetic way for our government to conduct itself.
Can I just ask you, Andy, do you think Heathrow is going to cost the Tories votes?
Absolutely. I mean, particularly in West London.
No, I think it's another example of Theresa May showing leadership and taking a difficult long-term decision, which is about increasing aviation capacity.
Can I just leave the final word with Lynn? You worked with Theresa May at the Home Office.
3 years.
What's she like? What's her Achilles heel?
Not letting anything go. Her attention to detail is legendary, and she's quite small. She has a small circle who she trusts, and she doesn't delegate enough.
Lynn, Andy, Oliver, we've run out of time. Thank you all very much for coming in. And that is where we are tonight. Thank you to all my guests tonight and to Sir Vince. I'll be back next month for an election campaign special. Until then, thank you for watching and good night.